Hi everyone, my name is Annie and I work for the Pikes Peak Library District. Today we're going to be talking about one of the key components of any Dungeons & Dragons campaign, combat. Now the items you will need for combat are a battle map, some kind of figures, or items to determine who is who, dice, a pencil, and of course, your handy dandy character sheet. Combat is vital to the progression of any D&D game. Your adventurers need to have enemies to fight to make it a quest after all. A typical combat situation in D&D is a fight between at least two sides. Combat, and most of the adventure, will take place on what is called a grid map or a battle map. This can represent a dungeon, a forest, or the layout of an inn. It all depends on what is on the map, which you can draw on. Each character will usually take up one square, which represents a 5x5 square foot space. These squares also determine how far a character can go based on their speed, though we'll discuss that in a bit more detail later. The game organizes the chaos of combat into a cycle of rounds and turns. A round represents about 6 seconds in game time. During each round, each participant in battle takes a turn. The order of turns is determined at the beginning of a combat encounter when everyone rolls initiative. Once everyone has taken a turn, the fight continues to the next round if neither side has defeated the other. Before initiative can be determined, the DM, or Dungeon Master, needs to determine if anyone involved in the encounter is surprised or not. If a group tries to sneak up on the other, the DM compares the dexterity stealth checks of anyone hiding with the passive wisdom perception score of each creature on the opposing side. Any character or monster that doesn't notice a threat is surprised at the start of the encounter. If you're surprised, you can't move or take an action on your first turn of combat, and you can't take a reaction until that turn ends. One member of a group can be surprised while other members are not. If no one bothers to try and surprise the other group, combat just starts. Once the surprise has been determined, the DM and the players must determine their locations on the battle map. Normally the players will already have their figures on the map in square tiles, and the DM will be placing the enemies appropriately. Now, how is initiative rolled? Every party member must make a dexterity check to determine their place in the initiative order. The DM makes one roll for an entire group of identical creatures, so each member of the group acts at the same time. The DM then ranks the combatants in order from the highest check total to the lowest, and this is called the initiative order. This order stays the same for the entire encounter. If a tie occurs, the DM decides the order among the tied DM-controlled creatures, and the players decide the order among their tied characters. The DM can decide the order if the tie is between a monster and a player character, however. Optionally, the DM can have the tied characters and monsters each roll a d20 to determine the order, highest roll going first. So, you know where character and enemies are. You know who's going when. So what can you do on your turn? Many things, as it turns out. You can move your character a distance up to your speed, which is listed on your character sheet, and take one action. You can decide whether to move first or take your action first. For example, on this battle map, this character has a speed of 30. That means they can move 30 feet divided by the 5-foot squares for a total movement of 6 squares. As a note, you can choose to move less than your maximum allowed distance. You can also choose not to move, take an action, or do anything at all on your turn. If you can't decide what to do or feel there's nothing you want to do, you should consider taking the dodge or ready action. Overall actions you can take in combat include attacking, casting a spell, dashing, disengaging, dodging, helping, hiding, readying, searching, and using an object. There may be other actions you can take based on your class as well. You can also sometimes get bonus actions on your turn through various class features, spells, and other abilities. However, you can only take one bonus action per turn, so choose which bonus action to take wisely. You choose when to take your bonus action unless the action's timing is specified. Anything that deprives you of your ability to take actions, such as being surprised, also prevents you from taking a bonus action. To attack, you choose your target. Determine what modifiers you will be using. The DM at this time determines whether the target has cover and whether you have advantage or disadvantage against the target. In addition, spells, special abilities, and other effects can apply penalties or bonuses to your attack roll. Then, to resolve the attack, you make the attack roll. Using a d20, you roll and add the chosen modifier, such as strength for a melee attack or dexterity for a ranged attack. The modifier can change depending on the type of weapon, like a finesse weapon. Some spells also require attack rolls. The modifier of a spell cast is determined by the type of spellcasting ability of the caster. I will get into this in another video after this combat video. If the die roll plus the modifier plus any proficiency bonuses is high enough, the attack will hit the target. If it is not high enough, that's the end of your action as your attack missed. The DM has the listing of all the AC, or armor classes, of your opponents. That is the number you need to equal or exceed. It is the same in reverse. If an opponent attacks you and their number equals or exceeds your AC, then you will be hit. Once this occurs, you roll for damage, which is listed on your sheet next to the attack. For a single-handed longsword attack, that would be 1d8 slashing damage. For the spell magic missile, that would be 1d4 plus 1, up to 3 darts starting at level 1. What if you roll a 20 or a 1 on your attack roll? If you roll a natural 20, or nat 20, the attack hits regardless of any modifiers or the target's AC. This is called a critical hit, which means you get to roll extra dice for the attack's damage against the target. Roll all of the attack's damage dice twice and then add them together. Then add any relevant modifiers as normal. If you got a crit using a single-handed longsword attack, instead of rolling 1d8 for damage, you would roll 2d8. If you get a 1, the attack misses regardless of any modifiers or the target's AC. It's essentially an automatic failure. There are a few different kinds of attacks that you can make depending on your character. If you attack a target that you can't see, you have a disadvantage on a roll. This is true whether you're guessing the target's location or you're targeting a creature you can hear but not see. If the target isn't in the location you targeted, you automatically miss, but the DM typically just says the attack missed. The inverse is also true. If you are hidden, enemies have disadvantage to attack you, and you have an advantage on your attack, though once you strike, that does give your position away. Ranged attacks are just that. Shooting a bow or a crossbow, throwing an axe or spear, and usually spells are also ranged. You can only make ranged attacks against targets within a certain range, unless using certain weapons that allow for use at normal range and at long range. You do have a negative to your attack roll if you use the long range option. Trying to aim a ranged attack in close combat also gives you negatives if you are within 5 feet of a hostile creature, who can see you and isn't incapacitated. So there, for example. Melee attacks are against opponents within your reach, such as a punch, a sword, or an axe. Claws, teeth, and horns also count as melee. Most creatures have a 5-foot reach in melee and thus can attack targets within a 5-foot square of them. If you want to punch or kick, that counts as an unarmed strike. On a hit, you deal bludgeoning damage equal to 1 plus your strength modifier. Everyone is proficient at unarmed strikes. There are also attacks of opportunity, which means you get an additional attack on an enemy that tries to move out of your reach. You can avoid provoking attacks of opportunity by taking the disengage action, or by teleporting. You also don't provoke if an outside force moves you, such as an explosion blowing your character a few squares away. Some characters may fight with 2 weapons, such as 2 daggers. In this case, when you take the attack action with a light melee weapon, you can use a bonus action to attack with a different light melee weapon. Both weapons must already be in hand to use this combo. Also, you don't add your ability modifier to the damage of the bonus attack unless that modifier is a negative. If either weapon has the thrown property, you can throw the weapon instead of making a melee attack with it. In some instances, your character may get into a grapple, which is when you try to grab a creature or wrestle with it. You can use the attack action to make a grapple, and if you get 2 attacks, this takes the place of one of the attacks. The target of your grapple must be no more than 1 size larger than you. For example, medium creatures can grapple large creatures, but not huge creatures. They must also be within reach. The attack roll is your strength athletics check contested by the target's strength athletics or dexterity acrobatics. You succeed automatically if the target is incapacitated. If your roll succeeds, you subject the target to the grappled condition. There are also conditions for ending the grapple, and you have the option to release the grapple you start at any time. To escape a grapple, it costs an action and must succeed on a strength athletics or dexterity acrobatics check contested by your strength athletics check. You can also move a grappled creature, but your speed is halved unless the creature is 2 or more sizes smaller than you. Other actions are just what they sound like. Casting a spell is just casting a spell, which I will discuss further in another video. Dashing as an action grants you extra movement for the current turn. The increase equals your speed after applying any modifiers. For example, with a speed of 30, you dash 60 feet instead. But this does take your action for the turn, so use this sparingly. Helping means you can lend your aid to another in the completion of a task. When you take the help action, the person you aid gains advantage on the next ability check it makes to perform the task you are helping with. This can be used out of combat as well. You can also aid with attacking a creature within 5 feet of you. If you team up in some way to make your ally's attack more effective, you get bonuses. If your ally makes the next attack before your next turn, the first attack roll gets an advantage. Hiding requires you to make a dexterity stealth check in an attempt to hide, which has a whole set of rules on its own. You can't attempt to hide from a creature that can see you clearly, and you give away your presence if you make a noise such as shouting a warning or knocking over a vase. If you are hiding until you are discovered or you stop hiding, that check's total is contested by the wisdom perception of any creature that actively searches for signs of your presence. In combat, most creatures will notice you sneaking up on them to attack, but the DM might allow you to stay hidden as you approach if the creature is distracted. Dodging is a great action. If any attack is made on you before your next turn, the attacker has a disadvantage, and you make dexterity saving throws with advantage. You lose this benefit if you are incapacitated or if your speed drops to 0. There are some spells that can do that. Readying an action means that you are simply preparing for the right time to act. You ready an action on your turn, which then lets you act using your reaction before the start of your next turn. In this case, you decide what circumstances will trigger your action, such as an enemy coming to attack you. Then you choose what action you will take in response to that trigger, or choose to move up to your speed in response to it. When the trigger occurs, you can either take the reaction right after the trigger, or ignore it altogether. You can also ready spells, which are cast as normal and you release at the trigger point. To count as readied, a spell must have a casting time of 1 action, and holding on to the spell's magic does require concentration, which again, we'll have a whole video about with the magic system. Search as an action means you devote your attention to finding something. This can be either a wisdom perception roll or an intelligence investigation check, depending on how the DM decides. You can also use an object. When an object requires your action for its use, that's when this comes into play. This action can also be useful when you want to interact more with more than one object on your turn. This could be valuable in dungeons with traps and enemies also in the area. Cover can be a lot of things. Walls, boxes, trees, and all of these simply make you or your opponent harder to hit. Now, there are 3 different degrees of cover, and they all offer their own benefits. A target with half cover has a +2 bonus to AC and dexterity saving throws. Half cover is when an obstacle blocks at least half of its body. A target with 3/4 cover has a +5 bonus to AC and dexterity saving throws, and total cover is what it sounds like. A target with total cover can't be targeted directly by an attack or a spell unless a spell has an area of effect range. You cannot combine levels of cover. If someone has half cover from one source and 3/4 cover from another, you take the highest cover of the 2. So the example just has 3/4 cover. Alright, we're just about done covering the basics of combat. For something so long, I get that this doesn't seem simple, but once you get used to how it operates, you will have no trouble joining any game. We just need to cover one more important topic of combat, which is damage and healing. Any combat you do in D&D is going to involve both to various degrees. So, hit points. These represent your life, essentially. More hit points, the harder you are to kill. This is covered a bit in my Basics of Character Creation video, so feel free to refer back to that for some more details on the topic. Now, a creature's hit points can be anywhere from their maximum to 0. This changes a lot depending on the damage taken and the healing the creature has received. Whenever a creature takes damage, that is subtracted from their total HP. The loss of HP has no effect on a creature's abilities until their HP drops to 0. When HP drops to 0, you either die outright or fall unconscious. Instant death occurs when damage reduces you to 0 hit points and there is damage remaining. You die if the remaining damage equals or exceeds your hit point maximum. For example, if you have an HP of 8 and you get to 0 and there's still 9 damage left to be dealt to your character, you are dealt a further 8 damage and instantly die. However, if the damage reduces you to 0 hit points and fails to kill you, you just fall unconscious. This unconsciousness ends if you regain any HP. The second scenario is far more common than the first. Now, whenever you start your turn with 0 HP, you must make a special saving throw called a death saving throw to determine whether you get closer to death or hang on to life. You roll a d20. If the roll is 10 or higher, you succeed. Otherwise, you fail. These successes and failures have no direct impact on you by themselves. However, on your third success, you become stable, which I will talk more about next. If you get 3 failures, you die. These successes and failures don't need to be consecutive, so keep track of both until you collect 3 of a kind. If you roll a 1 on any saving throw, it counts as 2 failures. If you roll a 20, you regain 1 HP. If you take any damage while at 0 HP, you suffer a death saving throw failure. If the damage is from a critical hit, you suffer 2 failures. If the damage equals or exceeds your HP max, you instantly die, as we talked about above. The best way to save a creature with 0 HP is to heal it. However, if healing is unavailable, you can at least stabilize the creature so that it isn't killed by a failed death saving throw. You can use your action to administer first aid to an unconscious creature and attempt to stabilize it, which requires a successful DC 10 Wisdom Medicine check. Once stabilized, the creature doesn't make death saving throws even though it has 0 HP. However, it does remain unconscious. If any damage is taken in this state, the creature is no longer stable and must make death saving throws again. A stable creature also regains 1 HP after 1d4 hours. What about monsters? DMs have monsters die instantly when they reach 0 HP, though exceptions can be made for major villains, allowing them to follow the same rules above that apply to player characters. You can also choose to knock opponents unconscious if you so choose, which is determined upon the attack that gets you the opponent to 0 HP. If you choose this, the opponent falls unconscious and is stable. In some cases, with certain spells and abilities, you may get temporary hit points. In this instance, if you take damage, those bonus points go first and then go into your usual HP. It is possible to gain temporary hit points above and beyond your HP maximum. However, those temporary HP can't be healed back. Once used, they're gone. Think of temporary HP more like a buffer against damage than actual health. Now, healing of a creature can occur through several different means. Rest can restore HP, magical methods such as cure wounds spells, or a potion of healing can also remove damage in an instant. However much you are healed is how much is added back onto your HP. If you have an HP of 12, take 8 damage, and are healed 6 damage, you have a total of 10 HP left. If the amount healed goes over the max HP of a character, they are only healed to full and not beyond. It's important to keep an eye on your HP and speak up if you think you need healing. Finally, we're going to be talking about damage. We've already gone over how to roll for damage, but for a quick refresher, you roll the damage die or dice, add any modifiers, and apply the damage to your target. Magic weapons, special abilities, and other factors can grant a bonus to damage as well, while penalties remove damage dealt. You will never deal negative damage. When attacking with a weapon, you add your ability modifier. A spell tells you which dice to roll for damage and whether to add any other modifiers. If a spell or other effect deals damage to more than one target at the same time, roll the damage once for all of them. Area of effect spells are a great example of this. There are also different types of damage, which is important to note as various enemies can have resistance and vulnerability to certain types of damage. I'll do a quick run through of the damage types, but for more in-depth information on this, you will need to take a look at the Player's Handbook. Looking at the monster manual to get a better idea of resistances and vulnerabilities also wouldn't be a bad idea. Both are available online to look at through the links provided in the description below. Most types of damage are fairly self-explanatory, but I will add a few details into some of the types of damage. The damage types are acid, which is corrosive, bludgeoning, which is a blunt force attack, cold, fire, force, that's pure magical energy, lightning, necrotic or undead damage, piercing, which is a puncturing or impaling attack, poison, psychic deals mental damage, radiant usually is associated with clerics or angels, slashing is a type of attack done by swords or axes, and thunder, which is a concussive burst of sound. Now, this was a lot to go over, and it can be difficult to visualize a combat scenario just from explanations. So what I'm going to be doing is a simple combat encounter as an example for everyone. Hopefully this will help demonstrate the flow of combat in D&D. Okay, so here is our sample battle map for our little tiny sample battle. Now, we can see our player characters here, our bold adventurers. We'll say they're out in the woods somewhere exploring, as one does. Now, when you're out of combat, you can kind of move the characters as many squares as you want, doesn't really matter. The squares mostly matter for trap placement and in-combat uses. Now, as our bold adventurers come to the fork in the road, we need to roll for initiative, because they have been caught unawares. Now, to roll for initiative, it is a d20 plus the dex modifier. So for our paladin, we have a -1 on their dexterity. Not great, but that's okay. A +2 for our cleric, and our opponent, our spidery friend here, they have a dex modifier of +2 as well. So we're going to roll. Okay, we've got 9 plus 2 for our cleric. So that's going to be 11. Not great, but not terrible. Let's roll for our paladin. Woo! Okay, paladin is going on 2. And let's roll for our spider. 12 plus 2. Spider's going first. So this is our order, our initiative order. The spider will always be going first in the round, followed by the rest of the turns. Now, this particular round, only the spider gets a turn because it is a surprise round. So our spidery friend here is going to come towards this very intimidating looking person and is going to use a bite attack. Now, this bite attack has a +4 to hit. So you take d20, 17 plus 4, 21. 21 beats our paladin's armor class, which is 16. So the spider has successfully bitten our brave adventurer. And so our adventurer is going to be taking 1 piercing damage, and now the paladin needs to succeed on a DC 9 Constitution saving throw, or they're going to take more damage. So looking here, our paladin has a Constitution modifier of 2, so 20 plus 2. That is a 4 plus 2. Doesn't make it. So now, our paladin is unfortunately taking more damage. The extra damage is a 1d4. So here it is. Boop. And we got a 2. So our paladin has now taken a total of 3 damage from our spidery friend here. And that was the surprise round. Now we are at the start of the next round, which, as you can recall from our little list here, the spider is going first again. So the spider, having seen how successful this particular attack was, is going to be biting our paladin again. So d20 plus 4. Our spider is rolling really well today. Okay, 19 plus 4. 23. Obviously, this clears the armor class, as we have previously discussed. So that is 1 damage, and let's see if our paladin can perhaps spare themselves further damage. 16 plus 2, 18. They clear. They do not take any further damage. They've only taken 1 more damage point. So they are now down to 8 health. Rough times here. So, now we're moving to our next in the order, which is our cleric. Our cleric, seeing his buddy being dreadfully injured by this terrible, terrible spider, is going to be moving into position to do a light crossbow attack. So, our cleric is going to move into better position, and our cleric has a move speed of 30 as well. So that is 5, 10, 15. Okay. Now, a crossbow is a ranged weapon, so we need to make sure that we're not within a 5-foot square of our multi-legged friend here. So now he is within range. He has a +4 to hit the spider. So we're going to roll. We're going to get really used to your d20. 17 plus 4, 21. Now, our spider's AC is only 12, so this hits. The spider is now going to be taking 1d8 plus 2 piercing damage. So you take your d8 for your damage roll. It's your 1d8. Roll that. 3 plus 2 is 5. So the spider has taken 5 damage. That has not quite dropped our spider, but that is a very solid hit for some level 1 characters. Okay, so now it is our paladin's turn. And our paladin is not particularly happy with our spidery friend. So, our paladin is already within 5 feet, so can't use the glaive. Glaive is a reach weapon. They would have to move out of range to use it, and that would provoke an attack of opportunity. Instead, the paladin is going to be using a warhammer. So, their warhammer, they have a +5 to hit. So we'll take our d20, bloop, 18 plus 5, 23. That definitely hits the spider. And the damage for the warhammer is 1d8 bludgeoning damage. So again, we'll take our d8. Ooh, rolled an 8 on that. Okay, max damage, and our spider is down. Only had 10 hit points. That is the end of the round. Now, if this went on a little longer, Paladin could have moved away, drank a Cure Wounds potion. Our cleric over here also has Cure Wounds as a spell that could have been used. But this is just to give you a general idea of how these rounds are going to operate. If you want to go further in depth, maybe have me do a more complicated, larger sample battle, please let us know and I'll be happy to do that. Paladin got mad right in time. You dare to bite me twice?
Paladin smash.
And there you have it. The basics of combat in D&D 5e. With practice and the handbook as your guide, you'll be an expert combatant in no time. I'm Annie with the Pikes Peak Library District, and I will see you next time on D&D Basics.